I think what I would love to hear in terms of your story is like what were those painful moments or pain in your past that kind of kept you from getting to that next level, and how did you, what were they? How did you overcome it? And then kind of the third part question is what are certain like wounds that are still kind of lingering that are keeping you from that next level?
So I don't talk about this. I don't think I've ever, as you're asking that question, I go, I don't think I've ever told people this part of my world. Some people might know it just from knowing me, but I'm in a family of 12 children. Mother and father love each other, but went through and are still going through their like old world way of communicating, right? A lot of people struggle, like husbands and wives really struggle communicating because of that old. It's like, you just don't talk about stuff, right? So my parents still to this day are struggling with that. And I see it, and I can still see the love, and they love each other and they adore each other, but like they really, hopefully my mom never sees this, but I look at my parents as a few people that were meant to love each other, but never in their whole lives of living in the same house, never figured out how to love each other at 100%. They survived loving each other 75%. Right. And so I watched that growing up.
What did that look like? Can you kind of like,
it's like the cold shoulder. It's like the cold shoulder stuff, right? Like mom's mad at dad. Dad's like, I'm not going to talk about this. This is bullshit. This is my house. All that stuff, right? All the stuff that I think a lot of us growing up either dealt with, or maybe even some people in this Zoom right now are still, you guys have carried that from your parents' household into your current household. And I have some of that too. Like I tell my wife, I go, when I first met her, I go, look, I'm the boss. If you don't like it, I understand. Because I went through a divorce. A lot of people don't know I went through a divorce. And I learned through that divorce that there's things are non-negotiables for me as a human being. And I need to find somebody who is okay with those non-negotiables, and also a level of communication that most people are not comfortable with, right? Like, I mean, I can get into that a little bit, but like linearly from my life, chronologically, I grew up in a household with my father who, my parents made a decision. They wanted to have a dozen children. They knew that. And so family is obviously really important to me. That wasn't a decision. That was something that was instilled in me. So I'm grateful for that from my parents. But my dad could not survive on a regular job, right? And so what my dad would do is he had limiting beliefs and limiting mindsets that my grandfather instilled in him, because my grandfather worked at a power company for 50 years and retired from the power company after 50 years with barely enough money. So my dad was like, that's the environment he grew up in. And so my dad had these things of like, I want 12 kids. I want to do better than my own father. I know that I'll be the one. I'll be the one person that changes this course of history. So my dad goes and gets a master's degree, becomes a CPA. He's a founder of a company, big company, Rockford Fosgate. A lot of people may or may not know what Rockford Fosgate is, but it was in the 90s and the early 2000s, the largest audio company in the United States. So my dad was a CPA there, and he was a part owner. And in 1983, the company had, this is crazy how times have changed, right? People talk about how things are hard. It's like things are different back then. There was a policy in the company that a new CEO came in, and his policy was Mormon free in 83. Yeah, I know. This is back when things could happen like this.
Oh, wow.
So his job was, he basically came in as like, I'm getting rid of every Mormon inside this company because he had something against Mormons. People, whatever that is. And so my dad essentially gets fired after being one of the founders of the company. And I watched my dad go, well, my religion and my faith is more important to me than a job. And so I'm going to go out and I'm going to paint. And I'm going to become a painting contractor because I've been doing it on the side anyway. I'm making 120 grand a year. Even back then couldn't support as big of a family as my parents had. My dad put himself through college as a painter and a contractor. And so like, he just learned to, that's what he learned. We bounced around before I was 19, which was the last year I lived at home. I had moved 26 times.
Wow.
Before I was 19. And so, you can take a lot of trauma, right? There's a lot of trauma that comes with that, of being a child that goes, oh my gosh, we're moving again. I got to break up with another girlfriend that I'm falling deeply in love with. I got to go make new friends all over again. And that was traumatic. I didn't know until much later in my life that it would become one of my greatest superpowers, which was I've never met a stranger in my life. Because I'm so adaptable to a new environment and new people and my wife, Laura's like, you don't understand this about yourself, but the trauma that you went through actually made you who you are, is that you don't see somebody as a stranger. You look at that as a new opportunity to make a friend. And that came from my parents, the trauma that a lot of people blame. And here's the thing. There's 12 kids in my family. How many of them are alive? Not all of them. My brother Corbin, who I named my daughter after, hung himself. And him and I shared a bunk, shared a bedroom our whole lives. We were best friends. I go on my mission. My brother was addicted to drugs and all sorts of stuff, because that trauma can push one person one way and another person another way. There was something interesting, like in my life when I was in 6th grade, I had a really good friend, Tyler Korth. It was a funny thing, because like all the girls really liked him, but he never was like, he's like, no, let's just go skateboard. I'm like, bro, these hotties are like asking us to go over, and he's like, no, let's go skateboard. He ended up growing up gay, or becoming gay. I was like, makes so much sense, dude.
I was gonna say,
it makes so much sense, bro. Which is great, and I love Tyler. We still communicate to this day. So anyway, I'm over at Tyler Core's house, and his brother Brian comes downstairs, and he's inebriated, but I had no idea what that was. And he was talking in my face, and like the alcohol, I was like, whoa, what is going on? And it was just like this whole 40-minute interaction where I was like, I never want to have that in my life. I never want to have that in my life. And that just told me I never want to be like addicted to anything, right? I never want to be beholden to anything. And that doesn't knock people that drink at all. My wife drinks wine, and I don't have any feeling about it. It's just, I didn't want that in my life, because I was now afraid of like, I don't want to lose control and ever look like that person. I was fear, right? A lot of that actually was a fear thing, not a motivating thing. So I was motivated by fear.
Yeah.
So I, of course, that was another friend that was my best friend for 1 year. How many best friends do you think I've had during 26 times of moving over 19 years? I've had to cultivate new relationships and do it quickly to get to a deep level. And I learned that very quickly. I learned that friendship was how I would overcome the trauma from the previous move. Like, all right, well, I got to get out. I remember we moved to 4010 East Fairview Circle, sophomore year of high school for me, senior year of high school for my brother Chance. And this is where things started going off the rails for both Chance and my brother Corbin. Okay. So my brother Chance, we pull into this house, we move in, we do the thing. And then, when you're moving in, you're like going to Home Depot or Walmart and you're getting supplies. And you're like, okay, we're missing this. We need toilet paper, whatever. I remember going with my dad a day after we moved in, just by myself, down to Walmart or whatever it was, come back, and we pull up to the house, and my brother Chance is laying in the dirt out front of the house. And my dad gets out, I get out, we walk over to Chance. My dad's like, well, what's going on? Are you okay? And he goes, I hate my life. I hate my life. And my dad said something to me, and he said, Pace, you always have two choices in life. You can either complain about what you got going on, or you can figure out how to make it fun. And that stuck with me as well. And so I learned, just watching other people living their lives, like, I don't want that in my life. I don't want that in my life. I don't want that in my life. And I would shield myself from being that person. At that moment in my life, I stopped complaining, and I'm so grateful. I was a sophomore in high school. I have not complained about anything. I will make comments about things that are annoying or bothersome or whatever, but I will never complain from a victim mentality, because of that exact moment. My dad taught me that, and I'm grateful. Okay. And I've got a like analogy that I'll get to here in a little bit. I know I'm long-winded. So this is where it went off the rails for my brother Chance. Okay. So my brother Chance started going and hanging out with like the hoodlums. He changed his name to Dice, D-I-C-E, like legit. Was like, don't call me anything but Dice. That was like his rap gangster name, right? And my mom, who's a sweetheart, would call him Dice. That's a good mom.
Yeah.
You could argue either way, but my mom loved him so much that she even quilted a blanket with a dice pattern on it.
Oh my gosh.
And my brother walks into the house, right? This is great, some comedic stuff. And he walks in the house, he's got a mesh wife beater on, so you can see his skin like tremendously. And he's got nipple rings, and he's got like, this is now, you obviously can tell he's hanging out with the wrong people, right? So he's a complainer. So what does he naturally do? And I watched this, and I don't know what it was, but I watched this happen. And this was another thing that really impacted me. I watched my brother search out and find other complainers. And then they wallowed in their complaints.
Misery loves company.
Oh my gosh, you're seeking validation for the way you feel all the time, which is really interesting. And I was learning this from a young age. So my brother Chance, you know, he's doing the thing, he's drinking, he's doing the stuff to the point where my parents are like, we're going to put you on the other house, part of the house. This is a big house. And we're going to put you on the other side of the house because we don't want you around the children, right? Because my dad still at this point, my dad's still having babies. My parents were still having babies 4 years after this, right? My parents hadn't even been finished making babies. My brother's a high schooler changing his name to Dice. What motivated my parents to have more of those? I have no idea. Okay. So he starts sneaking out. He starts doing the thing. And my brother Corbin, who is otherworldly intelligent, right? There's people that are so smart that their ability to pay attention in class, they call this ADHD, they call it whatever they call it. And sometimes it's just super intelligence, and it's like rudimentary, basic, general education is not a good fit for everybody. It just isn't. And so my brother Corbin at the time was a year and a half younger than me. He's basically in ninth grade. He starts sneaking out with my brother, who's 18. Okay. My brother Chance, if he heard me say this, I'm sure he'd cry, but my brother Chance is responsible, in my opinion, and so am I. And I'll tell you where I take responsibility for my brother's death. Because here's what happened. My brother Corbin then starts going out and drinking and being around the wallowers and the complainers and the things and that. And my little brother, ninth grade, started smoking weed, right? And I feel bad for parents because no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you love your children, their, trauma outside of things that you're intending to cause or inflict upon them are going to impact and send them off on a path. And some kids, my sister McLaren and myself, watched these things. We had the perception of like a 40-year-old person, right? And we were like, we don't want that in our life. We don't want that in our life. We don't want that in our life. And I went out and saw people were having fun and were riding motorcycles and hiking and doing things. And watching what I didn't want allowed me to go find the things that I did want. And I also learned at this age that when you get rewarded by doing the right things, and it wasn't like my parents came to me and rewarded me like, hey, here's money, here's this. You know what it was? Almost zero oversight of my life. My parents didn't have time to watch me. And because I did what I was supposed to do and I didn't cause trouble, my parents gave me all the leeway in the world to have freedom and never be put in a box. So I started being creative from a very young age. So my brother Corbin, my brother Chance were sneaking out, got my brother. My brother never went back to school. Literally like 3 months later, after he started sneaking out with my brother Chance, he never went back to elementary, dropped out. Very long story short, my brother ended up going to boys camp after boys camp. My parents are spending money to try and, get him back and rehabilitated. And my brother Corbin was so embarrassed by all of this that my brother ended up, very long story short, it's another story for another day, how he got to that point. But my brother ended up hanging himself. And 2 weeks prior, this is now we're 24, so it's much later in life, right? 12 years later. My brother comes to me. Okay. And my brother, a lot of this is like, I'm learning what I don't want in my life, right? What I don't want in my life. I don't want in my life. And I avoided a lot of things I don't want in my life by watching other people. And I had a wife at the time that I didn't do enough due diligence on. My wife ended up not wanting to have children. Still to this day, doesn't have children. She went and married a guy that they don't want to have children together. And that's not a good fit for me. But, you know, love is love and all that kind of stuff. So I'm living in this house. I'm married, 23, 24. My brother Corbin comes to me because we've always been either I hate you or I love you relationship. And this was a time where he gets evicted from whatever situation he was in. Somebody kicked him out of a house. He wasn't, you know, he's causing issues. And for the most part, I always helped Corbin. I always helped him, money, whatever. But about a month prior, he came to my house and he stole like a generator and a this and a that, and he went and pawned it. And what ended up happening is my wife says, or he comes to the house, literally knocks on the door. Instead of calling or texting me, he just comes and knocks to the door. He's got his dog, Ozzy, and he's got himself and his police car. My brother drove around in a police car, which is hilarious. Pulls up to the house and knocks on the door. Hey, I need a place to live. And my wife says, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I'm like, you know what, Corbin, like you just stole this stuff from me. Probably not a good fit, you know, and it was not a great conversation. So then he goes and he goes and figures out another place to live. But now where does he have to live? Another drug addict's house, right? Now he's even deeper into the wallows. I remember about a week before he killed himself, this is about a month after I said no, a week before he killed himself, he went up to my parents' house and my mom cut our hair growing up, obviously to save money. And so he came to get a haircut and I was sitting there and my mom said something about, you haven't showered in 3 days. I'm not touching you. And imagine being a mom who has always put in love to your children deeply, deeply, deeply. So then that moment of, I'm not touching you, you're dirty, carries the weight of 1,000 swords. My brother calls me up and he goes, I just need a place to put my stuff. And I go, no problem. So he comes over, puts all this stuff in my garage, fills up basically half my garage. Ends up hanging himself. Police come to my house because I was the only phone number in my brother's phone. And I have to go identify his body. I then identify, you know, the situation. I figure out what's going on. And then I go to my parents. This is a bit during the 2008 crash, so 14 years ago or so, right? 15 years ago, it's like during that whole economic crash, and there was no money. My mom and dad couldn't afford to pay for his headstone. And so what I did is I found, I just was like, we don't have a headstone. We're going to figure it out. So I edited a video of my brother. I did the music. I coordinated the funeral. I took responsibility because I've always been the responsible child, right? And, you know, there's a lot of things that impacted me during this time. One, watching my parents going through a financial, like economic hardship as well, of like, we couldn't even afford our own son's funeral. And so you know, still to this day, guys, if I walk into my parents' house and I turn left in my parents' house right now, my mom has like a craft corner and she has shirts of my brothers hung up in her craft corner on hangers. Still, she'll smell them. She still like misses her boy, you know? So funeral comes and we're standing there, 150 people. People loved my brother. People loved my brother. He was, you know, life of the party, funny. He would buy those 25-cent like hillbilly teeth at a grocery store out of a vending machine. And this dude would commit, like he would commit. So he would walk around as Jebediah, and he would literally commit for like a whole day and sometimes 2 or 3 days. No matter where we went, we would go order food. We'd go to the river. We'd go do whatever. My brother would commit. Like he was just fun. So 150 people there. my dad and my mom were like, you know, thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you so much for taking care of this. My mom was in shambles, and so I felt bad because I couldn't afford like a headstone for my brother, right? I couldn't afford it. So we're standing there, 150 people, and literally, I've told this story slightly before. A forklift starts driving down, literally in the middle of the graveyard, and it's got this headstone attached to it on chains. And we didn't know who it was for 5 years, but somebody paid for the headstone. They noticed. They noticed, and it was tear jerking because it was a photo of my brother. What they did is they wrote all the names of my brothers and sisters on the back,
Oh wow.
and then they had a picture of my brother. It wasn't like it just engraved. It was like they had somebody emboss like a photo of my brother, very high quality, on like a piece of marble, and cost a lot of money. Probably I'd say $10,000. And the anyway, so I watched this, and I again I learned from other people's actions. I was like, I will never let that human being forget what they did for me. It impacted me tremendously because what happened is my brother was my best friend, right? We grew up. There was like anybody else that has siblings, you know, the sibling rivalry, right? And like there was moments where my brother and I would put duct tape down the middle of our room, like, you stay on your side, you piece of shit. You know, that kind of stuff. And then you realize like how important these things are when you get older. What I realized at that moment was like, I will never turn down somebody who needs my help. And I take responsibility for my brother dying. I take responsibility for my brother hanging himself. My mom will never get over that. My mom is now 61, 62. My mom will never get over that. I don't know, like hiring a therapist for her, she might not be mentally ready for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I luckily took something from that and, you know, told myself, no matter who I marry, no matter whether I have a daughter or a son as my first child, I'm naming my first child Corbin. One, to honor my brother, and two, to remind myself that it's not my choice whether I help people or not. It's my responsibility. And so I've since that moment, it's like I can either honor my brother and do what I was taught in that moment, or I can be like everybody else and go back to my ho hum ways of just living my life, right? So those things impacted me, right? Moving all the time, being around a family environment, craving the, you know, camaraderie of a large family. You know, I mean, it shows in sub two, like really the culture we created here is a family. This isn't a mentorship. It is truly a family. And so I've created what I enjoyed in my life. And I learned from my mistakes. I learned from my mistakes. And, you know, it's horrible that my brother's not here anymore. And it's horrible to see those types of things and people struggle. But I also have learned empathy. I've learned how to, and I think naturally this is where another advantage I have is I naturally am an empath. Like I can see things in people that they don't see in themselves, even the pain that they're going through. I have empathy for it. And I also, like, as a great real estate investor, it really all has been about solving other people's problems, right? And so there's an advantage there tremendously that you've gone through trauma and pain. There's an advantage there of really caring about people. And so when I make comments like I'm the greatest closer of all time, it's because I believe truly in my heart that I care more than anybody else. And it's when I'm on the phone with a seller and they're like, man, how'd you get that all out of them? I'm like, because I know how to talk to people. I know how to connect with people because of my empathy. And then what's funny is the things that hurt me the most in my 20s, right? Because what I did when my brother passed away is I immediately doubled down on my generosity. I immediately doubled down on who I naturally was or who I wanted to be. And for about 8 years, people stole, took advantage of me. They took advantage of the generosity. Still to this day, I have a lot of people take advantage of my generosity. It's one of the reasons why I posted about the entitlement thing 2 days ago. And I got a coach, and that coach told me it's the greatest filter in the world is for you to be able to be who you are, be who you want to be, and you will bring in everybody to you. And it's your job to filter those people who you actually want to put that time and energy into. And so for me, there was this equation with John, my life coach that I had for about a year. He came to me, he said, what's the most important thing to you? And I said, and I told this whole story about like, when I help somebody, I don't want them to give me something back. I like watching them go do it for 10 other people. And I like watching my impact. And I think in some ways, I know this is a really bad thing to say, but in some ways it's me trying to repent. It's me like looking at like, I'm lucky. I'm so lucky. I mean, think about, I started my life on third base. I have good health. I have parents that love each other. I have a great family environment. I grew up white. I grew up male. I have advantages. I absolutely do have advantages that other people don't. So I would say I started on third base in a lot of ways. And so I could easily just go, I just need to run home and I can be a success. I could just run home and I could be a success and I could score that point. But what I've learned is what is more important to me is to yell at the people in the dugout, the people who haven't even had a chance to swing a practice swing. It's my job to be yelling at you from the playing field and saying, get your ass out of the dugout and get in the batter's box. You're up next. And so that's the life I chose. I chose that life because of the things and the trauma that I've been through. And, I ended up getting divorced from my wife because I realized I wasn't in alignment with her. And I was looking at myself like, man, you've learned so much by watching other people and deciding what you didn't want. And you went and married a woman that, you weren't sure whether she wanted to have the same life. You didn't sit down and have these conversations. But I learned from that. And so when Laura and I dated, we went on our first date to Kona Grill, December 29th, 2 days before New Year's Eve. How do I remember that? Well, I finally put a post on my Facebook page, but this is back in the time where I think they still did relationship status. So it was like single, right? Or I think there was something like recently divorced or something like that. It was like the beginning of Tinder. And the second I made that post that night, I get a DM from my wife. Okay. I get a DM from my wife, and it wasn't my wife at the time, but it's 3:00 in the morning. I wake up at 3:00 in the morning and there's a message there waiting for me. She says, "You're hot." I was like, "Oh, cool." And I'm just like, I'm now a year separated from my ex-wife, and we just had basically gotten divorced. So I was like, okay, I can either wallow or I can go and find a tribe, right? And go, I can either complain or I can go live my life. Those are the two choices. That's what my dad told me. My brother, laying in the dirt. Like, you can keep laying in the dirt because you just went through something, or you can get up and go create some fun and go create a life. So I go, wow, let's go on a date tonight. So we go on a date. And I told her on that date, I said, "You're beautiful. You're articulate. You seem, motivated, all these things." And I said, "Hey, I don't want to have a second date unless we can agree on these 10 things." It was so non-romantic. It was an upfront contract.
That's amazing.
And, there's things like still to this day, because of the upfront contract I had, which was like, I can't handle jealousy. I just can't handle it. I think you guys have heard my story with my ex-wife. I go to a movie. I'm in the movie with her. Her name's Jessica. My ex-wife's name is Jessica. And Jessica Alba's on the TV, on the movie screen. And she goes, "Do you think she's pretty?" Like, in the movie, she's whispering over it. "Do you think she's pretty?" I go, "It's Jessica Alba. Like, she's an actress. What are you talking? Like, what, She goes, "What do you think she's pretty?" I was like, yeah, of course.
Setup.
Total setup. For 3 years, up until we got separated, my ex-wife would say, "Do you think I look good in this dress?" I go, "Yeah, you look phenomenal. Look at that ass. Wow." Stuff like that. And she'd go, but I bet I don't look as good as Jessica Alba.
Oh my God.
And so I just learned, I'm not playing games anymore. Like those fun games of manipulating married people manipulating each other. Like I told Laura, I said, if you're going to play games with me, I played games. I did that. It was fun. I'm upgraded. I'm a man, and I'm going to work my guts out to the point where you'll question my sanity. You'll question whether I care about you. You'll question all of the things. Even when I'm not producing results, you'll question me. And I'm not going to have any of that. I want somebody that encourages me to be the best version of myself. I want somebody that protects me from the outside world. I want somebody that doesn't ever have jealousy. If I want to be with you, I come home every night. And if you want to be with me, you come home every night. And if I start doing things that are not in alignment with your goals, then you tell me. You don't hold that. And there's a lot of things that naturally women, you should agree to this, women have the ultimate atomic bomb weapon. Silence, the silent treatment. Okay. And you use it all the time and it's total bullshit. But for me, with Laura, is when those moments happen. I think the last time we've had one of those like silent treatment things, laying in bed, frustrated, not knowing what to say to each other. I made the decision. I go, if you ever show me with your body movements or your body language that you're upset, I'm going to stand in place. I'm not moving. And I'm going to show you that I too can show you with body language how bad this is. So if you want to play a war, I'm going to play a war with you, and I'm not going to play this game. Okay. And other women, oh, you'd walk out on me, but you know what? You don't deserve me. And so for me, what I told Laura is I said, if you use this body language shit on me, you're going to get it 10 times tenfold. Right. And we still deal with these things. Our marriage is not like what you would think perfect, right? Laura is perfect. I'm trying to get to that level. Laura's trying to work on herself and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of our things are like trauma from watching her parents. Yeah. This is the equation too. It's again, watching other people and realizing what I don't want. I watched my parents do this stuff. And so did Laura. Laura watched her. Isn't it scary to believe that you were molded by other people's behaviors? Like it, and you're really not as individualized as you think you are. Somebody else's bullshit excuses, their trauma, their that, and this, that, and the other really have created the behaviors that we all, follow through with on a daily basis. And so it's our responsibility to identify those and go, I'm not okay with these things, and screw my pride, because that was a big thing for my wife to have to overcome, is like, screw my pride. I'm mad about, you ever hear the story about, she told at the mastermind about how embarrassed she was about this Eric Sage thing. Did you hear that story? So this was the last time that I stood for this. It was a big fight. Okay. And I just came back. This is 5 years ago, right? Like I've been traveling and doing speaking engagements well before any of you guys knew me, right? It's just putting in the work. So, I go to the speaking engagement and I fly home and I land at like 7:00 at night. And instead of me coming straight home, guess what I did? I went to work. There was a RIA, right? There was a RIA there, and a lot of my friends and my business associates were there. And not only did I go to the RIA, but I didn't come home for dinner. I went out to dinner with my homies after the RIA. Now there's a lot of women in here. Oh, what? How dare you? You don't love me? You were gone for 2 days and now you're back, and the first thing you didn't think of was me? Yeah. You don't, that just means that you don't understand my vision. If there's an opportunity for me to benefit our family, even if I don't get an exact result from that one dinner, it's the relationship building process that ultimately made us a couple $1 million. I went to dinner with Eric Sage, and any of you guys know Eric Sage. I went to dinner with Eric Sage and we talked about assisted living. We went and did assisted living. Right after that, I owned assisted living businesses with him for a year. We made $1 million together in a year. And my wife, when I got home, my wife was like, I made dinner for you. I did this. I did that. I was like, bullshit. You made dinner for me to use as a weapon against me.
Mm.
That was a weapon. When was the last time you made this guy dinner? You don't know you don't know how crazy you know how crazy my schedule is. You set me up. You set me up. I have my calendar. You knew where I was going. You knew, and I texted you. It's not like I'm just willy-nilly doing what I'm doing. Hey, babe, just landing, heading over to the RIA. Hey, babe, RIA's ending. I'm going to go to dinner with Sage. You set me up.
Mm.
And so it's those moments of stopping. And that was a big fight. We didn't go to bed that night.
Mm.
We didn't go to bed that night. There was a big moment of like, do we want to have the same life that my parents have? Where my parents will allow themselves to go to bed like that. And, that instead of solving other people's problems for a week and like going out and creating an impact and doing powerful things with your time, you're sitting there doing these war tactics on each other when you're supposed to be freaking loving each other. Like literally people will have these problems in their households for a week. A week. And when you really think about how silly that mindset is, that you're supposed to be on the same team and going out there and conquering the world, but you can't even overcome your own pride over some stupid shit. Woo. So I made my point that night. I said, this is a non-negotiable for me. I told you when I sat down with you, I will work myself to death and I will bring you all the fruits. And I will fail over and over and over and over and over. But I told you who I was. You knew who I was. And if you're not okay with that, there's the door. And that's not a good feeling for a woman who's married and put her time and energy into building a family and establishing the house. But men, I'm telling you, you're a little bitch. If you're not running your household and you're not setting the standard and you don't have the right rules and you don't have the things, and women, you don't understand how powerful you are. My wife is 90% of the success that I have. Okay. My wife, funny enough, thinks like, or she used to think. It wasn't until later that she realized how powerful she was. And the thing that frustrates me the most is when I watch women and they are meek and they don't see the value that they bring and they don't understand. This is how I look at women. Okay. Sorry. And if you're lesbian or gay or whatever, you guys understand whoever plays whatever role, it doesn't matter. It's not that important, whether it's gender specific. So, and I see a lot of women like Rahima, for example, she's in the traditional sense, there's no better way for me to explain it with my limited vocabulary. She's the man in that relationship, which is awesome. And it works great for them. Right. When you look at a house, okay, you look at a house, a single family home. What is it that you see? You see the walls, you see the windows, you see the roof, you see the garage door, you see the front door. It's like literally 90% or more of what you see. What's the other stuff that you see? You see this teeny little sliver of what? The foundation. And so women don't understand how powerful they are. They are the foundation of that household, right? And without my wife as the foundation, I could never build anything on top of our family. I could never go out and build. And so many women are tearing down their husband, or they can't get past their own self-esteem issues or their, things that from their own traumatic past, which I understand, that they are not encouraging their other loved one to go out and build our family legacy. And so when my wife finally understood, I used that analogy that night during our fight. And I said, I don't know what else I can do to tell you this, but you're the foundation of this house. So you can either tell me to go out and get what is ours and go help and benefit people. And that was the thing too, is really hard for my wife, is she sees how many people I help on a daily basis. And she's like, you care. This is probably 7 years ago now. You care more about helping everybody else than you do about your family. Right. And I'd gone through my mindset stuff. I'm still going through some of my own mindset stuff, which I'll expand and tell you guys what some of my mindset stuff is that I'm working on. But my wife was a mindset thing for my wife, is not understanding that you get everything in life that you want by becoming selfless. Everything.
Yeah.
It's called the Elena method. Okay. You get everything you want in life by being selfless, right? Obviously with a little bit of structure. And if the woman understood the power, the wife understood the power they have as the foundation and the nurturer and all of those types of things, she would understand that I would want my husband out there more often than I would want him here less often doing nothing. And the other thing is, I see other women are like, I want my husband spending more time at home. Doing what? Like, what do you want him doing? He should have the kids out on job sites. He should have the kids out on buy appointments. He should have the kids at title companies. He should have the kids at meetups. In fact, you guys should never be home. Go out and build. What are you talking? What are you guys doing? Watching cartoons and eating cereal? Like, what in the F are you doing? Like, I just looked at everybody else's life, my parents in a lot of ways. And I was like, I don't want that. And I'm not okay. I know where this fight is heading. It's heading to us being 65 years old and going to bed angry with each other. It's either we nip this in the bud right now or we continue to deal with it. I'm not past this moment, past this night. I'm never dealing with this again. If you ever use this tactic on me again, not going to do it. And men or women, men are doing stupid shit all the time too. Okay. All the time. Like I think there's an epidemic in life, and it's basically men not actually working, and they're not going out and hustling, and they're not trying to be attractive to their mate. They're not courting and loving their woman and making her feel special. There's so many things that I have on the men's side, like so many more things than I have for the women. But if I could get the women to understand that one thing, that they are the foundation of the entire household, and you can't build anything without a foundation. Can't build anything without a foundation. And then I see men going out and trying to build things without a woman. And I'm like, man, you're trying to build a castle, right? I'm building a castle. In fact, I'm now building other castles for other people. Like, that's how good of a castle builder I am. I go, yeah, I'm building a castle too. No, you're not. You're building a teepee. You don't have a foundation. You don't have a woman in your world that is the biggest change ever. Literally a partner, right? And it's vice versa, right? If you're the woman, if you're the man in your relationship, whatever, in the traditional sense, you're building a freaking lean-to, a teepee, a tent, whatever. There's no foundation, and it's temporary. It's going to get blown over in the wind. I myself spend more time on my foundation than I do on my kingdom. And therefore my kingdom thrives because there's places to grow. Oh, Howard says, if we're single, we're screwed. No. Well, yeah, long-term, I'll tell you the truth. Yeah. Long-term, you're going to be in a world, you're going to constantly compare yourself to other people and say, I wish I had this help. Right. And it doesn't have to be married. It could be a partner, right? A business partner to some degree. It doesn't have to be a marriage. It can be a partnership, right? So yes, here's the better question. Ask this question. Am I going to get further in life if I have another person helping me? Married, non-married, partner, whatever. Am I going to get further, or what do you think? You're going to get way further with somebody else. Okay. And this is why having a community is so important.
And it's the right person though.
It's the right person. Yeah. And if people are like, oh, I'm screwed because I'm married or I'm single. No, that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about like a partner, a community, people you can rely on. Even my transaction coordinator is a part of my foundation, right? They allow me to go do what I need to go do, right? They allow me to bring what I need to bring to the table. And so hopefully that helps you guys understand that.
Kirk and I, we learned something really powerful from our marriage therapist. We've been going to therapy for about a year and a half. And I was struggling with some jealousy stuff. And he was actually like, since I joined Sub 2 and just spending a lot of time, he literally said to me, like maybe a month ago, he was like, this is hard for me to say, but I'm kind of jealous of Sub 2 and Pace. And we shared that in our counseling session. And I told some people this at Clever Summit because I thought it was just so powerful. Our therapist said a lot of people struggle with jealousy, right? And he helped us to have this perspective of like, how do we reframe that jealousy? Because deep down, the jealousy is we love spending time with that person, and maybe we're not spending it as much. But on the other side of it, though, right? is you, for example, like you're enjoying your time because you're utilizing your superpower of connecting with people and helping people and also benefiting your own family in return as well, like the business side of it, right? And so that perspective, right, is like that the spouse could say, I love that you have found something that you're passionate about doing, right? That's because the power that we have as women to our husbands,
Unlimited.
and I'm just, it's the power behind that, though, is the affirmation that we have to give, because that's part of the foundation, right? You guys work, you know, my husband, I love Kirk, and he works so, he's more of a go-giver than I am. Like, and it's crazy. Like, I'm a go-giver. He's like, he's even more. I have not released him to the sub-2 community because then, you know, we're going to be like poor and no time for our business. So like one of us needs to work. And so, but I love him, and I will lift him up so much because I believe in him. But I struggled with jealousy, right? And so for our therapist to say that, I've created 2 different conversations with him, and it's the focus is not this jealousy nagging perspective, but it's thank you for what you do for our family. Thank you for the sacrifice. I love that you have found something that you are good at and that you pour your energy into giving to people. That's one conversation, right? When I have the kind of the jealousy feelings, what I reframe that into is, I love spending time with you. Because what does that do? It actually encourages him to actually want to spend more time with me. He took me on date nights.
Yeah.
I schooled him in basketball at Dave and Buster's, right? Like, we enjoyed that time, but it didn't come from nagging, right? Which is that's our shit, that, you know, that it's the insecurity, right? Yeah. And so looking at the effectiveness, like if you want to talk about KPIs, right? Like, you know, spouses, whether you're, you know, the complainer, whoever, if you're the complainer, KPI track that stuff. How many times do you nag, and how many times does it actually turn into a deal where you actually get what you want?
That's a great one. That KPI, that's bars shit, right there. That's right? Bars. Write that one down.
But I love real estate in that way, because I can turn every life example into, right, a real estate example. But KPI, track that shit. Encourage your spouse and see the results compared to complaining. Just KPI it.